11 Steps to Summa Cum Laude. I got a 3.94 in undergrad, which helped me get into my dream law school. Here's what I'd recommend to get good grades in college. Step 1. Read it all. Read everything assigned. And read it thoroughly, carefully. Read with a pen or pencil in hand, and scribble notes, thoughts, ideas, and connections in the margins. Interact with the text. Try to see if you can spot what points the professor will bring up in class. Better yet, see if you can guess what kind of questions the professor will ask based on the text. Step 2. The best note-taker star goes to you. Take good notes in class by hand. This means don't be lazy in class and think, oh, maybe this isn't important, I'll remember this for sure. Don't bet on it. Try to take the best notes out of anyone listening in class. You don't have to compare them later or anything, but make it your goal to do the best note-taking you can. Step 3. Refine your notes. Reread your notes before the next class. Type up your notes a couple of days after class if you have time. Better yet, convert your notes into a series of questions and answers that you can quiz yourself with. Step 4. Get help from others. Not until you're ready. Avoid study groups tutors like the plague unless you're in one of two situations. A. You're genuinely struggling with a concept problem and cannot seem to solve it on your own after you've tried a couple of times. B. You feel like you know the material well enough to teach it to someone else, to have an in-depth conversation about the material with someone else. Step 5. Go rusty, then go polish the hard way. Let the material get little rusty in your mind before reviewing it. I don't mean wait until the last minute to cram. Instead, a week or 2, or even 3, before the exam, look over your notes, reading marginalia and underline text, quiz yourself with the questions you've made, etc. Make sure that you're reviewing the hard way, meaning, make sure you are actually covering the answer and seeing if you can say it out loud without reading it. Flashcards are gold. Try to avoid rereading, it's too easy to do you much good. The harder you have to work to recall information, the better you'll know it. Step 6. Learn to love the practice problems. Do some of the practice problems in your textbook, especially the harder, more advanced ones. Then check the answers. If you get it wrong, great, that means you're focusing on something you need to learn. Figure out from the textbook how to get the correct answer, and repeat. Asterisk 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 make sure you know why the correct answer is correct. Could you explain it to someone else? Step 7. Wiki learning. For literature and humanities courses, do a little supplemental reading to help you develop a richer mental background. Pull up an encyclopedia entry or two on the author and time period you're reading. Do this as well for history and philosophy classes. Can you contrast the information you see in an encyclopedia entry with what your professor is saying? This doesn't have to be that time-consuming. Take 20 or 30 minutes to check out an online entry for a book you're reading. Asterisk asterisk also, if your literature professor doesn't give you reading quizzes, make your own. Write down a question or 2 or 5 from each chapter, questions that get at what you think is the gist of the material. Try to see if you can answer these questions without looking at the text. Refine these questions after lecture. Reviewing these questions will be your best friend when studying later. Step 8. Draft away. Always try to finish a rough draft of a paper earlier rather than later, preferably a week or 2 earlier. Try to make the rough draft as perfect as you can. Then take the paper to your professor to get their opinion on it. Take notes on what they suggest. Then write the heck out of the paper again. If you can get another draft done a couple of days before the final paper is due, great. Repeat the advice-seeking process. Step 9. Always sleep on a paper before turning it in. This means working on a paper till you feel you've done all you can, then getting a full night's sleep, then printing out a copy of your paper and reading it thoroughly, twice. Read it once to check the structure. Everything logically okay? Does your argument fit together smoothly? Then read it again with a pencil in hand. I literally moved my pencil across every single word, to check for spelling errors, grammar mistakes, and to cut needless words and tighten up sentences. Fix these errors again, then print out the paper and read it to someone. I would call my mother and read my paper to her over the phone. The listener doesn't even need to offer feedback. Rather, this is a good way for you to approach your paper by thinking of the person who will be reading it, seeing it with someone else's eyes, for example. It will help you see if you've explained your argument clearly, and it will help point out awkward sentences that need fixing. Step 10. Shoot for 100%. Prepare for everything that the exam could possibly cover. Even if you think you know something, you don't. Prepare just to be sure. Prepare as if you're trying to make a 100% on the exam, even if you know that's not possible. It will pay off when you get a 95% and the class average was 65%. Step 11. Cheat sheet. Before the exam, take a single sheet of paper. Imagine that the professor allowed you to write anything down on this sheet of paper and look at it during the exam. What would you want on it? Write down everything you can think of that you would want to look at during your exam: formulas, particular themes, the name of this theorist, this particular element, what this test meant, etc. Now you have a sheet of paper with all the information that you need to make sure you have a good grasp of before sitting to take the exam. If you study it carefully, you won't need to have any cheat sheet with you. Keep in mind, I'm not advocating taking in a cheat sheet with you to the exam. Throw it away before you take the exam. Bonus step: teach. This might sound crazy, but I would head to an empty classroom with a whiteboard, then pretend I was a professor of the subject I was about to take an exam on. I would imagine that I was conducting a 2 or 3 hour review session for the exam, and I would try to teach to imaginary students all the material they'd need to know to make an A+ on the exam. I'd imagine questions they'd ask, I'd write down formulas and flowcharts on the board, etc. There's no better way to make yourself feel more confident for an exam.